It's Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for it is not Monday. I've said that a few times today. It is Tuesday, the 20th. So, what I will try to do for you in this video, as always, is give you a recap of the most interesting moves for the day. We'll go over the indices. We'll try to do that in say 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll just kind of talk about overall what this market is doing. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it consolidating? Is it worth putting some money to work on these dips? Or is it better to kind of sit on the sidelines and watch a little bit? So I will try to kind of go over some viewpoints, and you can kind of come to your own conclusion. I never want to basically, go out and give you a conclusion. It's just basically just the overall factors and the weight of the evidence that I try to give you. Risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. And please read the full risk disclaimer there. And as always, I do go over my trades too to kind of give you a sense of what I'm doing and how I'm kind of positioning for the day. So I will do that as well. So a couple things, themes of the day, macro. I always have now. I've just put macro on the top line, not that it's the biggest theme of the day. So these are not in any particular order, but dollar and rates moved a little bit lower today. Not crazy. I think what did TLT do for the day? TLT was just slightly up for the day. So not a big move. It kind of cooled a little bit. I think it was up a little bit. It was up about 0.4 of a percentage point. So that kind of came in the dollar, which was a little bit lower for the day. Semis, software, tech, those at one point were the worst performers for the day, but some of them kind of came back a little bit. So I'll examine that. Solar, crypto stocks, those were also on the worst names, but like I said, some of them finished off the lows. And the VIX, which finished up to 1540, I might as well just show that. I wanted to show the VIX chart. Here it is, right? Remember just a week ago, which was, last Tuesday when we had the CPI report, we had the big spike up in the VIX. We kind of came in and sat down a little bit. So a little bit of move higher here, but nothing yet to really kind of worry about because as of now, this could be a lower high from last week, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on it this week. All right, so let's talk about the indices, and I do have a chart of the bonds up because again, I view this, as something to kind of keep your eye on. Right now, we've been kind of going somewhat sideways over the last week, but we are below all those short-term moving averages. So, I'm watching for kind of a breakdown in bond prices, which means, higher up in rates. We're not out of the woods there. All right, so let's just talk about the SPY chart. We'll talk about, did we break any support today? Obviously the markets were a bit weak today, but no, not really. So, I know that sometimes when you turn on the TV or, when you look at particular stocks, there were more stocks that got hit harder than what the SPY did today, which was down about 0.5%. But overall, yes, we're below the 5-period moving average, so we lost a little bit of momentum. We also have this question about whether this is a double top. We don't know the answer to that question. For now, I would watch that 20-day moving average. You kind of have it was almost like a floating hammer for the day. So it wasn't a real under pressure type day. It reminded me a little bit of last week and what we saw in terms of, we had kind of a swoosh open in the morning, a little bit of, we can kind of look at this 5-minute chart really quickly. We had a little bit of a swoosh lower, right? And then we had a bounce, right? And then the bounce was kind of defeated, right? I think you can kind of go back and look at this last week, right? I think so we're at so this would be Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, and I think this was Tuesday where we kind of went, I don't know, maybe my days are confused here. But so I'll go back and re-examine for whatever I just confused myself. So let me move on, because this was kind of what we saw last Tuesday, where we started down. We had a little bit of a bounce till about 11 o'clock, and then we went in and we took out the lows. Same thing we did last week on Tuesday, right? And then we kind of begin to kind of crawl higher. Notice the VPOC being taken out. So this is just the 5 minute, right? It's not going to show us to anything else really. What I tend to watch very closely is the daily chart, the weekly chart, and the 1 hour chart, right? So for SPY, we're kind of just sitting right back in the bottom of the value area. So so that's something that I would watch is right around 496. Also, S&P futures are going to look a little bit different. So again, we just don't have like a really clear signal here yet. You just need a little bit more time, right? If we look at the S&P futures, they have a different picture, and they did, close below the value area. So SPY, again, is going to have a little bit of a different volume profile because it trades mainly during the cash hours, and S&P futures trade almost continuously. So here I would watch, and I pay a little bit more closer attention to S&P futures, and that's 4,994.75. So notice that we broke, right? We've got a little bit of a retest, and if we don't reclaim this, right, then I would say, be careful to the downside. All right, so that's the first thing. Qs, let's do the same exercise here in the Qs, but let's start with the daily chart. And again, you're able to see the yearly value area, but same thing in terms of, price hanging right around the 20-day moving average. Now, this had a smaller distance to go. So actually, this did close below the 20-day moving average. But notice the hammer bar, and we're holding above the value area for February. So as long as price holds above that, it could just be that we kind of go sideways a bit. There's Palo Alto might bring down the whole might bring down the sorry, I'm just reading about Toll Brothers. Toll Brothers boosts full year deliveries forecast, but it might bring down the cyber names and hence have a little bit of a further move weakness on the Qs. But for now, I would watch 423.51. Just coming into the top of value, like no breakdown, right? But weakness, right? And of course, we know what time we're in, right? We're in one of the weakest periods, seasonality. IWM, same thing, right? We're just coming in, obviously, and this was weaker than the other indices, but holding above the value area for the month. And the level to watch there is 197.76. I just wanted to touch these 1 hour charts too. So just bear with me. Sometimes I lose my train of thought when I see some headlines, but again, this is also inside value for the week too. Let's just do Qs. This did break the value area, but it did take out a virgin point of control, right? So I mentioned support on the daily chart. I would also watch this support here right around 424.87. Okay, so we came in here, took out that VPOC, went a little bit lower than where we were last week, and bounced on it. Okay, so below the value area. So we'll see if that holds in there. And that's basically it. I mean, in terms of the indices, right, is obviously weaker, but nothing really breaking down, nothing that I would go out and say, oh my God, we've got a problem, right? And that's yet, right? So again, we've got a lot to get through this week, next week, right? We've got a couple more weeks of February to go, and we'll see if that kind of holds in there. All right, and then I've got about 10 single stocks to go through. Right, we now have, by the way, on our list, we've got about 100 names that are strong earnings names. So many of them are extended, right? And many groups too, like we kind of talked about NVIDIA too, and we can start with those charts if you like. But the problem with NVIDIA is, and why the chips were kind of weak today, is just because they got exhausted to the upside. Right. Here was the move. I talked about this pre-market. It was really the first time in multiple weeks that this has started the week below the value area. So, again, just more sellers. People want to kind of cash in their chips before a big unknown event, right? That kind of makes sense to me. And I did get out of my position of, I haven't owned NVIDIA or SMCI in my trading account, but I own them in the TTG trend portfolio. And last week, I took profits last week, right? And then today I took the rest of the position off. I just don't want the event risk, right? And if it's a strong report, maybe it will regroup and show another opportunity. But I don't need to mess with something that's up as much as these are. Right now, in terms of the TTG trend portfolio, this did come down, but had some fight back to it. But yeah, I think it's been like 6 weeks since this started. For example, last week started above the value area. The week before that, above the value area. A week before that, above the value area. A week before that, above the value area, right? So these are value areas just for the week, right? This one inside the value area, right? All the way back in here, I think was the first week that we actually saw a little bit of pressure, and that was the first week of the year, right? So since the first week of the year, right, we haven't seen any weakness. So, overall, that's pretty damn good, right? Let's just keep things in perspective. Here was the 1 hour chart for SMCI. I was wrong on this one. We started today inside value, and I thought we would stay there, but we did have some pretty big weakness, follow through. But this came back, right? But I wouldn't get excited about this either. Even though it kind of rebounded quite nicely, right? We could look at the daily chart for this. Right? It's a big old hammer bar for the day, but oops. Yeah, I mean, maybe kind of coming into this 20-day moving average and finding a little bit of support. But, I think this is going to move, this should move depending on what NVIDIA does. All right, so let's look at some other areas. So let's look at some other areas, but I wanted to just go over Taiwan Semiconductor, right? This is a name that I think for whatever reason, seems to get forgotten a little bit, right? But remember, Taiwan Semiconductor had good earnings, right? And has kind of come in here a little bit. Let me just show more of the chart so that you can kind of get the overall picture. But this is what we want to see, in some names that got extended, right? Here's your breakout, move back to the 20-day moving average, and we wait. Right? We wait for some buyers to kind of come in and say that they're interested and start to take a bite or a nibble in this thing. I think not yet in Taiwan Semiconductor, but this is all about adding to your watch list, right? Home Depot managed to actually put in a green day today, even though they talked about how this might be a more difficult year, right? One name that I'm watching that had good earnings is AZEK. Again, I don't think it's there yet, right? But it will be on our radar. Right. And I don't even have it on our watch list for the week because I think it's just not yet. Right. Notice for this week, by the way, I really kind of chilled out with the watch list. Right. I have a couple consumer staples on there. Right. I've got Goldman on there. Right. I've got some banks on there. So it's just some different names, rather than a lot of tech and software. That was one of the things that we talked about in the weekend video that I thought IGV looked like it had the possibility to roll over. It did. Notice how it's flashing the bearish 80% rule. However, I would watch the 50-day moving average. I don't normally play the bearish 80% rule when we've got something like a 50-day moving average sitting there. So for now, it's hanging above that 50-day moving average. But yeah, looks a little bit weak. And of course, started to look tired last week. And on Friday, it broke into its value area. Right. So again, let this group that I think was overcrowded, let it wash out a little bit. Let people kind of focus on some other things. Speaking of which, IHI medical devices. This was a chart that I sent around, right, and said I was looking for some opportunities in this group. Looks pretty good to me. Again, not the fastest moving chart. So when I see a chart that is not really moving fast enough for me, I begin to kind of look into the individual movers. And Abbott was one name today, had a nice day today, up 2.3%. And I like this chart. I think this now it's breaking. It held support where it needed to about a week ago, right? Checked into the top of value area for the year, right? Held it and is now breaking, above the value area for the month. So my ultimate target will be looking for about a 6% move up to 123.80. It does have to get through some short-term stuff. I say short-term stuff, but for example, there was a VPOC that was taken out earlier. I took a target here. So, just watching that overhead supply on the shorter term. But yeah, I mean, this is a nice looking setup in my opinion. The banks, right? So just a couple of them to kind of focus on. Um, Citigroup is one of those that has seen a lot of call activity, right? And it did, I was looking at between Citigroup and Wells Fargo. Nice inside day on Friday and starting to extend back up again, right? Possibility that it takes out these highs. Here's Wells Fargo, right? This had big momentum on Thursday of last week, and then kind of a day of nothing really on Friday, and I went long this name today, right? I left room in case it comes back to the 5-day moving average, but ultimately looking for this to get up to 53.48. CMG, again, nothing to do with this name yet, right? This is Chipotle, big earnings gap. Maybe let it come into the 20-day moving average and fill this gap, or let it get back above the 5-period moving average. Nothing to do yet. Hood, which is a name that I established last week, right? On earnings, this one you really kind of what I think makes sense is to look at the weekly chart, which we did, I think, in Friday's video. But I think this thing looks great, right? Big long base and trying to remedy higher there. One more too that I talked about on Twitter. Toast. Might as well stick with this weekly chart. Not much of a move today, which is perfectly fine in a tough market. Let's see if it can get above that 22.97. Nothing to do yet, but I think overall, good looking picture here for Toast. And yeah, I would be interested if it breaks that 22.97 or 23 level. Here's what I did today. I took advantage of, we talked about in our member Q&A on Friday that I thought it was a good place to add a hedge, right? We went over like 3 different trades that you could have done depending on what your risk tolerance was. Going outright puts for the end of the month. We talked about a call spread. And I also talked about a put fly too, that you could have done too, either for the end of this week or the end of next week. You could see I took some profits in that. Also took some profits in Costco on the open on the back of Walmart. I tried a little bit of this Cisco, right? I decided to bail on it. Again, I don't want a ton of positions right now. Or not, I should say a ton of positions, but I just want to make sure I don't have too many positions on, even though I'm still seeing some favorable setups just outside of tech, right? Another one that I like is Clorox too. Here's what Clorox looks on the weekly chart or the daily chart. Remember, this had a nice gap up, real nice base breakout, and it's just been settling in here. Again, may not be ready yet, but one that I'm going to keep an eye on. And I established a little bit of Uber too. I was really quick to take a target with this one. For now, I kept it on, just very, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do is execute kind of the plan that I talk about in the weekend member videos, talking about these last couple weeks of February being very tough seasonally and hitting more base hits rather than, swinging for a home run at this point. All right, guys, that is it. I traded a little bit, nice little day trade at the end of the day in the semis ETF, but that's it. Again, just hitting some base hits right now, right? And that's the game plan. I think having that mindset till the end of the month makes sense, and then we can kind of see how that goes and see if we start to get some opportunities in some of the really strong charts that are just pulling back to like their 20-day moving average. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.